The White House is sounding like the Maduro regime in Venezuela this week, blaming the rise in prices across the board on the greed of corporations and meat conglomerates. For their part, the media seems to have their back. Earlier this month, CNN actually published a piece entitled, "Why Inflation Can Actually Be Good for Everyday Americans and Bad for Rich People." Nobel Prize winning economist and New York Times columnist Paul Krugman wondered aloud, is there any good reason to believe that inflation hits low-income households especially hard? So, all that extra money you're paying for groceries, gas, and literally everything else, it's not really a big deal. Actually, it's really good for you. Also, it's the greedy corporations' fault. And we need to spend trillions of dollars to stop it, right? It all makes sense. Actually, none of it makes sense, but we'll explain. Joining me now is the host of I'm Right with Jesse Kelly here on the First TV, and of course, syndicated radio host, the one and only Jesse Kelly. What's up, my man?
Buck, I can't believe people say these guys are out of touch. I mean, Paul Krugman knows the average American is struggling to put gas in his car and buy groceries. He lives that life surely with his New York loft apartment and all these other things. Look, what are they going to do? I mean, what are they supposed to say? I mean, we can make fun of them for it. I'm sure we will. But you can't cover up what's happening. That's the problem. We finally arrived at a problem they can't really cover up. You can't cover up the fact families, they're not going to travel for Christmas because they can't afford it. I hear this all the time. I'm sure you do too. Families are looking at their grocery bill and saying, I've got to cut cable. People are making these decisions right now. And when you tell them it's because of greedy meat companies, that's probably not going to rub people the right way.
It does sound a bit like Generalissimo Psaki should maybe calm down a bit unless she wants more comparisons to Maduro's Venezuela here, where that's always the go-to, isn't it? I mean, when the socialists are in charge anywhere and they have things like price controls, or they start printing money to pay for the social programs, because that's usually what does it, that are debasing and destroying the currency, it's always some capitalist exploiter's fault, isn't it, Jesse?
Every single time since Lenin. I mean, it was always, every single time a communist is put in communism, of course it never works. That's the problem with it. On top of murdering a bunch of people, it just never works. And every time they find somebody to blame, and it's always the capitalists or the kulaks or like you pointed out in Venezuela. I do think, we talk about Venezuela, Buck. Let's just pause for a moment here. Venezuela sits on the largest oil deposits on the planet. I mean, it's not just the Beverly Hillbillies who call it liquid gold. They are sitting on the largest vat of liquid gold in the world, and people are starving to death in that country. That's how bad communism is. There's nothing they can't ruin. And back to Jen Psaki, sorry to filibuster here. She's not actually terrible at her job because she lies. It's her job to lie. Her job is to lie on behalf of the regime. She's terrible at her job because she's so cold. She does not come off as an empathetic human being at all. Hey, Jen Psaki, could you explain why this puppy was mowed down in front of your house and she wouldn't be able to muster any sympathy at all for anybody? That's who she is, probably because she's a ginger.